Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. It's me and Shashwat sitting in Bangalore recording remotely. We have come here for an event and hope to meet some of you tomorrow evening in Bangalore in JB Nagar. If you're still thinking about coming, you can find the form and fill it out and we'll try and get you invited. There is limited seating, so if you are interested, do fill it out soon. Other than that, today morning as we were heading to Bangalore, there was an article which Shashwat read in Economic Times by an author of a book which I had shared with you called Our Dollar, Your Problems. And he's a very good thinker in terms of what's happening in the tariff and macroeconomics. And his article was quite interesting. I shared the article details in the community post in YouTube. So if you're interested, you can go catch it there. And I thought we'll have a discussion with that with Shashwat and get his opinion about the article and what he had said. Who are we talking about, Shashwat?
None other than Kenneth Rogoff, the chess grandmaster and economist. So he was interviewed for a piece on the Economic Times. So we were reading it in the airport. I spotted it and I shared it with my uncle. So let's discuss about it. So where should we start?
What was he saying in the article? What does he think about the tariffs?
So basically, Kenneth Rogoff in the article, he talks about the Trump tariffs. He talks about the US being the reserve currency of the world or not being the reserve currency of the world. And he talks about which countries could come in place to replace it. And he talks about the prospects of India, especially because, of course, he was interviewed by the Economic Times. So they asked him about the prospects of India. So these are the broad topics that he covered.
So what is his view about the currency being replaced, the dollar being replaced? Do you think it's possible? Because in the book, if I remember right, he says certain things have to come into place for that to happen. He says replacing a standard currency, global currency like this is not easy, but it just happened in history and it happens for a variety of reasons. And he says it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a long period of time where the faith in the currency is basically lost. He says the main reason why a reserve currency loses status is because it loses the trust of the world. And that loss of trust, do you think it's eroding on the US dollar?
I still think that they have room to, or rather, not me, but Kenneth Rogoff said that in the piece that it's possible, like you said, it's possible that the US may not be the reserve currency anymore. There's a chance that it could slowly revert and it could go to something else. He opens up this possibility, but like you said at the same time, he says that it has to be something that comes over a period of time. The world cannot switch out of something that quickly. Processes are fragile. It takes time to move from one system to another. And putting a lot of stress on a system that's already working on an interconnection of different moving parts working together, it's very hard to remove and change everything without breaking the entire system altogether. So given that, he also acknowledges that yes, it's possible and there is a shift towards so-called de-dollarization where people are moving to other alternative assets. So one such asset is the euro, another such asset in Asia, supposedly the renminbi. Of course, he mentions that though in Asia the renminbi is considered, as one such asset, he personally doesn't see it happening anytime soon, simply because the type of governance in, China and the fact that they're not willing to let their currency float free. These are things that need to be addressed, and you need to have free capital flow in order to be able to have a world reserve currency status. You need to have a large economy, you need to have free capital flow, and you need to have trust with the regulatory authority who's issuing your currency so that they don't overissue the risk of devaluing the currency. All these things are why he says that he hasn't seen a contender come out. And he says that in Europe, at least they have the advantage of a euro, a unified currency. In Asia, we do not have a unified currency, which he says is sort of not very promising in terms of an Asian currency going and saying that I'm going to replace the dollar. So this is with respect to the de-dollarization. This is what he said.
Yeah, I do agree with this. Because for us to consider now in this current environment to be replacing the dollar, it has to be purely on economic grounds. And for economic grounds, right now, in the past, it was the might of your military or you forced people into it by brute. Now the world is in the position where brute force will not work because everyone is sitting in a position where they can retaliate in equal measure. In the past, it was brute force which managed to do this. Now we are not in a world where anybody can use their brute force to do this, because anybody can retaliate in equal measure. Yeah. So it has to be purely based on having, equal access to that currency. I don't think anybody in the world will agree for anyone having a reserve currency where they don't have equal access to dictate how that currency is used and how it's treated. Yeah. So gone are the days, I think, where we'll have a reserve currency from one world where everyone unifies behind it. If it does happen, I think it will be more egalitarian, and it will be a currency where maybe it will be like something like the United Nations. We'll have a united currency of sorts.
That's what Keynes,
Yeah, going back to what Keynes was saying.
Yeah, but yeah, so he also said that gold, of course, is something that's because before it was the US dollar, it was the US dollar simply because they were attached to gold. And before the US dollar, the sterling was also attached to gold. And before sterling, you had the Dutch currency that was also attached to gold. And before
They're not even the Indian rupee was reserved for a while.
Yeah.
And Keynes was in charge of it.
Yeah. And if you look at the Roman Empire, and now I'm going really back and really back in history, but even the Roman Empire's coin was in gold. Its weight was measured in gold. So the idea is maybe we're seeing a push back to gold. But the thing is, all the times that a certain currency couldn't maintain its peg to gold, we saw basically the currency go from reserve to not reserve. But today, the US dollar is one such currency that broke its peg very,
long time ago.
Yeah, very
almost 60 years ago.
Yeah, 60 years ago under Nixon, very deliberately they broke their peg against gold, and we continued accepting, taking the US dollar because the point was the US was basically indebted to the rest of the, Europe, and you had other exporters from the rest of the world. So if they decided not to take the US dollar, that simply meant that the money that they had accrued was valued at nothing. So they had to say okay to taking payment in US dollars without anything in backing. Because a lot of, especially Europe, put a lot of pressure onto America by France, especially put a lot of pressure on Nixon by forcing conversion of US dollars into gold, challenging the peg, because he knew not Nixon, but rather the government had printed too many notes. And by government, I mean the Federal Reserve as well. So the idea is that, in fact, there was one statement by, I think, the French ambassador or, French official who said that we'll rather have our gold get out of the Federal Reserve and shift on ships through ships back to European mainland. That was unheard of, At that point, of course, Nixon came in and he pulled the plug on the entire thing, and he said that Europe has to pay its fair share, much like how our current
US
Trump was saying. And he basically forced Europe and other countries to accept devaluations of the dollar. And they did. They did accept the devaluations, and we eventually settled on a free-floating system. So that's the story behind that. So it's very possible that we see a sort of reversion to gold, because if you look at the treasury reserves that are held across the world in reserve banks, you'll end up seeing that the second largest holding has now surged to gold. It's not any other currency, not renminbi, not euro. It's gold. And the first, of course, is US dollar, of course. But gold is the second largest, asset that's being held. Of course, some of it comes from gold being appreciating in value. But there's also the other part of all of the central banks around the world have been at least slightly bolstering their position in gold. It's anywhere from slightly to a lot. China has been actively purchasing a lot of gold from the market. So because they're exporting so much, they need to do something with the dollars, and they're purchasing gold out of the market. And that's why gold, surged the way it did against the dollar, simply because gold had a premium attached to it, simply because that it was the backup to the dollar as the world reserve currency. I don't know whether we're going to go back to gold. And, Kenneth Rogoff did not say that gold is going to be the replacing factor, but
I don't think so.
People are defaulting to what they know best, is how I put it.
Yeah, because there's no certain way, because people are angry with Trump.
Yeah.
Then there's no way out. And the reason why gold is not also preferred is because it locks up currency.
Yes.
It actually doesn't help economies grow. It doesn't lubricate the system. It's more like having fat deposits in your breath.
That's why Keynes hated people having cash in hand, because he felt that was the least productive way you could put it. Because even if you deposited that cash into a bank, the bank can use that to lend. But if you keep it in cash, There's nothing you can do with it. That's money that's pulled out of the system.
You're pretty much extinguishing it. It's like buying a stock back. It's like buying shares back. When a company is buying its shares back, you're extinguishing that share, and the pie is becoming smaller. Same is true if money goes out of the system and people lock it up in gold or lock it up as just cash, as Rashid was saying. The amount of money and actual flow of the economy starts shrinking because money is getting choked up. And this is a problem, and this is one of the reasons why Nixon stepped away from gold, simply to infuse whenever cash, he felt like infusing cash. The right or wrong is questionable. But there's a main reason why gold, converting back to gold standard is going to be difficult, because of a simple reason. The way our economy is built now and the way capitalism works, you need a bit of freedom and a looseness when it comes to monetary policy, which you don't have if you're pegged to gold. Even people who were strong, people who believed in being pegged to gold, do contend with this issue, saying, yes, you're right. The amount of liquidity you can create with gold is limited because gold itself is limited. I mean, that is a plus of gold. That you can't keep creating gold wherever you want, like crypto you can. You can't keep mining gold. The amount of gold we have is finite.
Well, just to be clear, the idea is that there's only a finite amount of Bitcoin you can mine.
Okay, Bitcoin may be one, but the problem is there's so many cryptocurrencies. I'm saying crypto.
Yeah, cryptocurrencies are endless in supply because anyone...
There's a big difference between Bitcoin and crypto as an ecosystem entirely. Yes. So it's like saying Zimbabwe dollar and US dollar. Both are dollar, but vastly different. If I said I'll give you a few Zimbabwe dollar, you'd be like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
You'd rather take a few American dollars.
Honestly, if it comes to crypto, I'm happy not having either.
Yeah. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah.
So another thing he was talking about was the tariffs, the implication of the tariffs. What is the view on the tariffs?
Implication of the tariffs. So he basically said that this time it looks like Trump has won and he's taking a victory lap, and he's being ultra aggressive now because he's seen that the little bit of pushing that he's done has gotten him something good. So he's planning to go big or go home. Kenneth Rogoff says that right now he's going big, but there's a chance he might have to go home with licking his wounds, simply because countries are going to figure out that you can retaliate, and they're going to figure out a strategy on how they can retaliate.
You're saying that because Singapore Prime Minister was on a panel recently, and he said, it's not that we are giving up on the world global order. He says, till the US decides to come back and join us, we'll have to imagine a global order without the US. He says all of countries who ever agree on free trade will continue to work under the World Trade Organization, the Free Trade Organization, who have signed on to it. We'll continue doing what US, right now it's gone to siesta.
Yeah.
When they feel like coming back, they can come back, but the rest of us will carry on. So that is quite possible. What Rogoff is saying is countries will get fed up being bullied. Finally, everyone, there's only so much bullying you can take. That's what happened with Hitler. He thought he could just keep bullying and take the entire continent in the world. Suddenly, Churchill came back as Prime Minister when Chamberlain was thrown out. And Churchill said, no, you can't bully me. I don't care. If I have to die, I'd rather die. If some few countries start banding together like this and people start coalescing around that, it'll form a strong resistance to...
What's going on for US right now, what's going in their favor is that China and India are unable to form a pact together simply because they share a border and there's a border dispute and there's a historic friction between two.
There's a huge trust deficit.
Yeah.
What the Chinese did way back in 1960s.
Yes.
Right or wrong, I do not want to get into that discussion.
Yeah.
But the Chinese did what they did, and that has not been able to, can never be wiped off from the Indian memory, because that was a kind of a situation, what they did to India was so unexpected by the Indians. So it's led such a trust deficit. It has to take a monumental shift in attitudes. Yeah, and that monumental shift will only happen if there's a huge change in Chinese society. Because the problem is the government which did that to us in 1960 is still in power.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything against the Chinese. It is the government which is ruling.
We have a layered history.
Yeah. And it's really complicated. So at one point in time, we were almost friends. We were allies. As it was a world that could have been imagined. It is China and India turned out to be friends back then, and we had managed to forge a partnership because of shared ideology in certain aspects. This world will be very different if China and India were friends.
Yeah, no, and the problem is that the way China operates today, it seems to want to be the dominant partner in its relationships with other countries. For example, be it Pakistan, Bangladesh, any other country, Sri Lanka that they've lent to, whichever country that they wish to assist.
That is the funny thing when you said Pakistan, because Trump is trying to rub Pakistan in our face by saying, we're going to develop their petrochemical. I was like, dude, they're owned by China already. The ports are owned by the Chinese. So also if Pakistan, you offer them free entry into the American market, China will say thank you very much and freight everything for Pakistan and send it to you. Put a made in Pakistan sticker over there and send it across to you, and Pakistan will stamp it through. So I don't understand what Trump is saying.
No, but nonetheless, what he has working for him is that the other countries are so jarred by that the US could have done something like this, that they're sort of scrambling a response, because in the short term they're all scared about the repercussion. For example, the friction between Trump and Modi is because of agriculture. And it would seem that our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has something to do with farmers, in the sense that he does not want to upset them anymore. Past what has already been done in the past.
Yeah, we remember what happened in Delhi.
Yes. So the idea is Trump also needs that, line of voters, and he needs those people to help him in the primaries. So you're going to have a situation where both leaders are unwilling to sacrifice that one small chip that they could have sacrificed if things had turned another way for both of them in different time periods. However, as fate would have it, both of thickest of friends, they seem to have this one shared agenda that they needed to get done, but now that's sort of acting as their friction.
This reminds me of that famous thing James Carville said, it's economy, stupid, because natural allies for any democracy, large thriving democracy like the US, is country like Canada, the entire Western European continent, even India. We're natural allies because we have the same ideology. But now it's turned about money. So once it boils down to money, ideology exits the window. Ideology is not going to feed me.
Yeah.
It's not going to feed my kids.
Yeah.
I need money. So it finally boils down to...
Which is why he's still given China time to, negotiate.
Begging China to negotiate. He doesn't want to... He will won't do to China what he's doing to India.
Yeah.
Because that will really upset the apple cart for him.
Yes.
And considering the fact he's got midterms coming end of next year, and a new Fed will be coming in before that, and he really doesn't need inflation to go soaring through the roof. And if, what's his name, Fed,
Jerome Powell,
yeah, he holds the interest rates like this, the entire year, or when he gives one marginal cut and continues to be at these high levels, it's going to be very painful going forward, because they managed to buy time because they've been hoarding stock or whatever you want to say, AI boom. But somewhere along the line, it'll rub off. It'll all come to an end.
if this continues.
Yeah. It cannot sustain this. It's not sustainable. It's like holding a breath underwater.
Something has to change.
Yeah. That's the same thing he's saying in the piece. Kenneth Rogoff. Like what Shashwat is saying. It's like kind of run a marathon like a sprinter. You can't be Usain Bolt and sprint a marathon and finish in 10 seconds. After the first kilometer or so, you'll be like, your chest will be exploding.
Yeah. And that's the nature of game theory, where even Napoleon, the conqueror of Europe, as they called him, he had a very famous quote. He said, don't fight the same enemy too many times, for you'll teach him your tricks.
Correct.
And he'll know how to fight you. So similarly, I feel like Trump is now moving into the territory of people knowing what is in his hand. And he's already played his hand. If he continues pushing the same hand, he's going to push them beyond the point of any reasonable semblance of gains to be made for the US. And he's going to cut off the US from the rest of the support systems, up to the point where he'll make even, enemies into friends, simply because they have...
It happened right in Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, Trudeau's party was about to lose.
Yes.
And because of what he did with the Trump, what Trump did with him. And he's back in power, and all the Canadians have, lined up behind him. They've said that we can figure out later. But this is an existential threat. And the same thing is true in India. If Indians start feeling this is going to be a big problem for us, you bet my bottom dollar, all Indians will stand behind the Prime Minister, whomever the Prime Minister. Because right now we need to get through this. Then we'll worry about everything else later. It will become the, dialogue, which can backfire on if he's not careful. So we'll have to see. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. It was fun time this conversation remotely from Bangalore. Tomorrow, hopefully we'll get to meet some of you, and I will definitely record my video tomorrow. And if it is post-event, then it'll be even better. Then I can definitely give you
some electricity.
I'll be able to give you some anecdotes and what all happened in the event. Anyway, thanks for watching Bearish today. It was fun having this conversation remotely from Bangalore, like I said. Anything else you want to add, Shashwat?
No, thank you.
So thank you for being with me and Shashwat today, and we wish you a great evening. Good evening.
Good evening.